Hey, this is Kimberly, and this is the Mommy Project. Thank you so much for joining me this week. I love spending some time with you guys. The Mommy Project is a podcast that's interactive, meaning that each week I end the podcast episode with a question that I'm asking you guys to kind of talk amongst yourselves, maybe, answer the question on social media on Instagram. Or just kind of to create conversation amongst your friends or family or yourself, and to kind of get the communication, the community of mamas growing and tearing down those isolating boundaries and borders, I guess you could say. All that to say, I'm just trying to start a conversation. I am so excited about sharing this with you guys. We are getting super close to having baby brother in our family. And so I wanted to share with you and ask you the question, how did you name your baby? Like, how did you figure out this is it? This is what I want to name our child. And I think that he or she will be good with it for the rest of their life. And so I was going to share with you kind of our personal struggle with naming our little boy, our youngest, our number 4, and just kind of see what you guys think about this struggle. I mean, maybe you can relate to it, or maybe you've got one child, you knew exactly what to name that baby, and you're good with whatever you decided. And so with that being said, I'll go ahead and start the struggle with naming baby number 4. And I hate to say baby number 4. Little Quattro is what one of my friends calls him, and I have adopted that little name for him until we can figure this thing out. But I'll say this. We have, for all the others, for Evie, Maverick, and Wyatt, we have figured out the name, whether my husband remembers this clearly or not. It's been about the 5th or 6th month mark is when we have figured out that's what we're going to name our child. When we were first pregnant with our first baby, and I'm going to kind of go back and kind of tell you a little bit of our origin story so that you can understand why this is such a anomaly and such a struggle for us with number 4. But when we first got pregnant with our first child, we both thought it was going to be a boy. I thought it was going to be a boy based on the fact that there was all boys in my family. Now, that's genetically not correct because the man and his sperm is what dictates the sex of the baby. But I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking about just oh, we're probably going to have a boy. It feels like a boy. I think it's going to be a boy. Not that I knew anything about what it feels like. And so when we found out it was a girl, we were completely blown away. We had already had our name picked out for the boy, Maverick Max. I had always liked the name Max, always. And Craig was the one who contributed Maverick. I don't remember exactly why he liked that name or why he gravitated towards that, but he did. And the minute that he said it out loud, I was like, that's it. That's what I like. I want that name. I love it. Well, and I think a lot of times this happens. You have a certain name picked out, and then you find out, especially the first time, you find out it's the opposite sex of the baby that then you have the name picked out for. And so you have to scramble around and thinking, oh, okay, well now it's a girl, so we can't use that name. We'll save it for later. So when we chose Evie, Leona, that's her name. I chose Evie because I had one time read a book. Actually, and I did not like the book at all. To be honest, the book was hanging up by, I guess, Delia Ephron. I'm not sure. It was one of the Ephrons. I'm a huge fan of Nora Ephron. I've read everything that she's ever written. And even the movies that are completely disasters, like Hanging Up, is a complete disaster. I liked that name. if you're familiar with that movie and that book, you know that it's about 3 sisters and their relationship with their aging dad. And the middle child, Evie, is the one that takes the brunt of the caregiving, and she's got a lot of things she's working through. And it wasn't the character that I liked or even the story or anything like that. It's just the name. I love the name. And I have since heard many variations of that name since then. But it's always, I was like, oh, I love that name. That's so cute. I like the name Eve, too. I like the meaning of the name. I'm a big believer in naming the child something that has a good meaning to it, because it's almost like your first blessing over them. And so, yada, yada, yada. So Eve means life. It means woman. And Evie is just a derivative. And I wanted to name her Eve, but Craig was like, well, we're going to call her Evie anyway, so let's just go with that. And then he came up with Leona, which is like a lioness. He was just looking up strong female names. And as soon as he said that, I was like, that's it. I like that. We're going with that. Simple. I mean, very straightforward. We had a whole list of names that we were trying out, but ultimately we came down to that one. And it was really cool because in my family lineage, my grandmother she's done the ancestry thing and the generational thing before it was ancestry.com. She and her cousins did the actual legwork and research. And Leona is a family name that I didn't even know. So it really worked out. And then our second, we already had his name picked out. I liked Max. Craig contributed Maverick. Voila, there you go. And so with our third, Wyatt, Craig's dad's name is Samuel. So I was the one who chose Samuel. I knew I wanted to use that for a boy name. I really thought that Wyatt would be our last. I wasn't 100% sure, but I was like, well, I think we're good. 3 kids is good. And so I knew I wanted to use that name, when we found out we were having another boy. And then he contributed Wyatt. And so really, I didn't realize that we were going on a theme of this Americana, Western, cowboy theme of Maverick and Wyatt. That was never my intention. Again, my contributing names were Evie, Max, and Samuel, and his were more Western, Leona, Wyatt, and Maverick. And so with number 4, so many people were like, well, you got to stay on theme. You've got to stay on theme. And I'm like, but I don't like any of those names. I don't like any. When I go to Pinterest or I go Google baby names that would go with Maverick and Wyatt, I don't like any of them, like at all. And so here we are, 9 months pregnant, and we're still not sure what we're going to name baby number 4. And isn't that like it? Names are so personal. I know there was a big trend. I don't know if it's still a trend that some families name their children, the same letter. So, there's like Chad, Christy, Craig, Creighton, Colby, Chase, all of them had the same C name or, D's or whatever. And if that's you do you. I don't want to do that. That would be too confusing. I can barely keep straight the names that I have. I call Wyatt Maverick and Maverick Wyatt and Evie, And so anyway, I, about the 5 to 6 month mark, I asked some of my friends or I just put it out there on social media, help me out. What are some suggestions of names that would, for a baby boy, because we're completely at a loss and we're just struggling here. And so I'm just going to read you some of the names that we've considered, and then some of the names, and that they were vetoed. So they're not on the board at all anymore for whatever reason. And then some of the names that some of my friends or people that I know just in the social media world have bestowed upon us with much appreciation. So here's some of the names: Josiah, Miles, Lucas, Silas, William, Zeke, Luke, Jacob, and Finn. Now, Josiah, we actually have several little boys that are about Maverick's age that are named Josiah. I think that's a beautiful name. I really do like it. But sometimes when you are bombarded with a name that you really like by other people's kids, it kind of is like, I'm not really there for it anymore. And so Josiah was something that we wanted to name our baby when we were still thinking we were going to have our firstborn was going to be a boy, before we arrived on Maverick Max and then found out it was not a boy. So Josiah, he was real big into he might still be. He was a pro Xterra athlete, a pro triathlete that Craig really liked and followed a lot at the time. And this was several years ago. This is like 7-8 years ago. So that's where that name originated from. Of course, it's a Bible name and things like that. But Miles, that was out. That was Craig's input. And I was like, well, no, that's my nephew. One of the many names that he has. I think my nephew has like 3 or 4 names. And so that's one of them. So we can't do that. Lucas and Luke can't do Lucas and Luke because first of all, there's 1,000 of them out there, and that's a beautiful name, and that's your darling's name. Then more, I love it. I really do. But there's also the problem that me and Craig, we are big, huge Bachelor and Bachelorette fans, and Craig thinks this is ridiculous to let this sway whether I like a name or not. But you do you, and I'll do me. But there is a contestant this year on The Bachelorette, and his name's Luke, and he's just the worst of all worst. I mean, just flat out the epitome of all controlling, jealousy, egotistical, misogynistic, all the things that you just do not want in your son. He is it. And so I'm like, yeah, I could not, even if I was 100% behind that name after watching that show, I'm just like, I couldn't do it. It ruins the name for you. And I don't know if that's ever happened to you guys. Like, you have a name picked out and then you meet someone, or you have a bad run-in, or you find out something about that name that just like, it's like a deal breaker. Well, that was for me. Finn, I like that name too. It's cute, but it just didn't fit. And so all of those names, again, I liked them, and then something would happen, and I was just like, no, not it. So we were back to square one. Here are some names that some people have have suggested, and some of them are funny, some of them are serious. I'll start with my favorite. My favorite first one is Holiday Hogan. Now, Hogan is my maiden name, and Holiday obviously is from Doc Holliday, and it was a joke, but I got such a kick out of it. It was a family member that I absolutely adore. So we were like, no, that sounds like a wrestler. Thank you very much. He's not going to be he might be WWE later, but we don't really want to go that direction. Thank you. Walker. So another of the couple of that suggested Holiday Hogan, they actually suggested Walker Holiday. And I was like, well, that's kind of cute. I could maybe go on that. Turmeric. Yes. Like the spice that is anti-inflammatory and super cancer, fighting and things that you drink in your hot tea at night to help you sleep and have good digestion. That was suggested. Hunter, Paul, Jonathan, Levi, Drake, Drago, Case. I mean, do you see kind of a theme going here? Like they're trying to help me out doing this Western theme, and I'm like, no, I'm not having it. I'm not having it. And for the longest time, I couldn't figure out why I just didn't like any of those names. And I realized that I didn't pick those names. I didn't pick the Western theme. And so my mom suggested Alfred because that's her maiden name, and we could call him Freddie. Thanks, Mom. Jonathan William, Kai, meaning fire. That was also my mom. And then Fritz. And so, needless to say, we're not going with any of those names. And it's become almost an obsession among my friends and family. Like every conversation that I have with my grandmother, every one of them, she asks me the standard question. Have you named the baby yet? Well, is the baby going to ever have a name? What's the baby's name? And I'm like, I did not realize this was such a big deal to so many people that they had to know until this struggle. And so, and I'm now to the point where I'm like, even if me and Craig decided to, what to name our kid, I'm afraid to even say it because I just don't want all the opinions, And I struggle with this with all the other kids. And if you have ever had a child and you have told the name of the child before they were actually born, I'm sure that you have had lots of opinions about what you chose, good and bad and ugly. Whether it's the silent, passive-aggressive types like, okay, why'd you do that? Or we could call him this, and a complete nickname based on how much they hate the name that you chose. Or people love it, or you find out that 5 of your friends actually love that name too. And so naming a baby is such tricky business. It's so much pressure. Why? Why is it so much pressure? And we put it on ourselves and we put it on other people. And then we tell our opinions like it's any of our business. And it's not. It's not, I mean, we could grow up and they could hate their name and change it. So anyway, that's our struggle with our naming our baby. Hopefully by the time this episode goes live, we have arrived at a name. But we'll see. We'll let you know. He's not going to leave the hospital. And this is what I tell everybody that asks me or gives me a hard time. He's not going to leave the hospital with just baby boy on his birth certificate. So just everybody calm down, me included. It'll happen. I promise. But in the meantime, give me some suggestions. I would love to know what you think we should name our youngest child, little baby brother, especially, and also let me know, would you even go on theme? Like, do you even have to do that? You could name him whatever you want to. You don't have to name him Billy Bob just because you've named all the others a certain type of name that's along the same personality or this same kind of theme. I mean, just because you name all your kids like the Duggars, what is it? Is it a K name? I can't remember. But just because you name, or J, it's a J name. Just because you name them all with the letter J, you could decide to throw it out on kid 18 and be like, you know what? I'm going to go with something different. I'm going to go with Juliet. No, that would be a J. I'm going to go with Christiana and, something completely different. You can do that as a parent. That is our right, our only probably thing that we get to do, or the first major parental thing that we get to do is we get to name our child. And after that, all bets are off because kids come into this world with their own mind, their own rules, their own sets of all the things, and they give us a run for their money. But until then, the biggest thing that we can control is their name. And And so I would love to hear, how did you name your child? What's the story? What's the background behind your the system? Did you and your husband work together, or was it just him, or was it just you? How did that work? It is such a complex system. For everybody, it's different. And I think that it's really cool to figure that out so that you can later tell your kids. I mean, I love to hear how my parents also, I was their youngest, my parents also went to the hospital, had no idea what they were going to name their third child, thought I was a boy because ultrasounds weren't apparently that great. And because they had two other boys, they thought, well, it's probably just going to be another boy. And out came a girl, and then my dad named me. So I love that story, and that's something that this is going to be a part of baby number 4. This struggle is going to be a part of his story, that we really agonized over his name and the right one, and this is what we came up with, and it means this, and this is why we named you this, and so all of those components are something that kids really love to hear, and I would love to hear. I love to hear how you arrived at your name, how you arrived at your child. How did you name your child? And so let me know how you did that. You can find me on all the socials. Well, not all the socials. YouTube and Instagram. My 2 favorite ones. You can find me there on Instagram at The Mommy Pro. And then my YouTube, The Mommy Project, you can find me there. You can find me on my website, themommypro.com. That is where you can find all old episodes, ones from previous seasons where we talked to all different kinds of mamas. And you can find my Maiden Grit episodes about endurance sport and Ironman training and nutrition and all that, recovery and all that kind of stuff. The documentary Braving the Ironman, please go check that out. It's a really cool kind of love letter to that whole year of my life. And also it still manages to inspire me, even though it is me. I know that sounds weird and a little bit egotistical. I don't mean it to sound that way. But I oftentimes, when I have watched like a little bit of this episode or that episode, because my kids love the one that they're in most, I always am like, how in the world did I do all that? It doesn't even feel like me. And so check that out. It's called Braving the Ironman. It's a journey about a mama going from nothing, going from like not even running a half marathon to finishing an Ironman. And it's really cool, that transition. And then I would love to hear how you named your baby on Instagram. So you guys have an awesome week. You're doing so good, mamas. I just want you to know that I'm encouraging you. I'm rooting for you. Hug your babies. Give them extra hugs and I love yous. Even if it's been a terrible day, always in that day with a big old hug and an I love you. And just know that you're doing good. You're doing really good. I'm rooting for you. So you guys have a great week, and I'll see you later. Bye.